So, Rupert Everett, absolute pleasure to talk to you, and congratulations on the film.
Thank you very much.
We know that you've played Oscar Wilde, of course, again here. You've worked in adaptations of his work. What came first for you, the connection with his work or the man himself?
I suppose really the work, especially because my first encounter with him was very young, aged about 6 or 7, when my mum read me his children's stories in bed at night, and I have a very, very strong recollection of that, and of being quite amazed at all the ideas in those stories, particularly since, I lived in a kind of almost pre-Freudian world in the 1960s. I came from a military background, so people didn't talk about love or suffering and all those things. I mean, these were all completely alien ideas to me. So I think it was quite a revolution for me to listen to these stories. They're quite violent stories, some of them. The Nightingale and the Rose, the poor little nightingale who kills herself to make a red rose. I mean, these things were just absolutely out of thin air to me, and I think had an enormous impact. Having said that, I didn't really encounter Wilde again till drama school, because I went to a Catholic school through my education, and they didn't like Wilde because of the gay thing. And I didn't like Wilde very much in drama school.
Why not?
Well, because we all wanted to do things, it seemed a bit old-fashioned at the time, and people wanted to do things that were more gritty and violent, and there were different things happening at that time. But then, little by little, I started doing him in the theatre, and that worked very well for me. I was a good fit as an actor with the dialogue. I think I understood it quite well, and I did a few plays, one in French in France, and all of them just worked very well for me. And then the movies came. I did the Ideal Husband and The Importance of Being Earnest, and after that I thought, it would be amazing to do a film about himself, and that's really when the idea first came into my mind.
And I know this was such a passion project that you pursued for about a decade, am I right?
A decade.
And what kept you going, and what kept you thinking, no, this story really needs to be told? Because that's such a amount of time and struggle to invest in a story.
Well, obviously at the beginning you don't know how long it's going to take. Yeah. You always think everything's going to take 6 weeks, and then 6 weeks goes by so fast that it's already a year and a half before you've even thought about anything. And so at first it kind of took me by surprise. I didn't realize how long it was taking. But then after about 4 years, nothing had happened. I'd exhausted every financial outlet. No one wanted to take part in the film, and it got very complicated. But then I would always have something happen that kind of kept me going. And then I had the idea of doing The Judas Kiss, the play by David Hare, in London, and he let me do it, and we put it on we got a deal at the Hampstead Theatre Company, and then things slowly started changing. What it taught me is that tenacity really is the only thing I think that's necessary in life. I mean, that's quite depressing in a way, but I think it's true.
I would imagine for any director, their directorial debut is exhilarating and intimidating, but for somebody to do a film about a real person and someone whose work you've admired for so long and who's a person you've felt connected to, does that add a level of it being completely daunting? Did you have reservations about directing, and what was the moment that said, no, I'm the person to do this?
No, I never had any reservations
really?
on that side of things. I felt that my script was good. And after the 10 years, you have such a long time to question every single bit. And I felt that after 10 years, I was still engaged in the story. And that was really all I needed. By that time, I knew so well how to perform it, because I'd read it again and again and again and again and again. And I performed in The Judas Kiss for about 2 years on and off. So I think it was a very useful, even though it was a big struggle for me, I think the 10 years preparation in a way for the film made the making of it much more doable for me.
For me, watching the film, there's such a sense of empathy behind your camera. We're not watching Oscar Wilde as a spectacle. We kind of experience the world as he does in terms of the mood and how things are lit. We see it through his vision. Where did that come from? Was that inspired by other directors? Was that your connection to the material? It just seems so palpable.
Well, I had this idea that he looked into the camera right at the beginning and kind of invites the camera along. And that probably sounds a bit wanky, but that was my idea, and that's really what happens. At the very beginning of the film, you have this picture of him reading to his children as a younger man, and then you see him kind of half passed out at a bar, and he wakes up and looks in the camera, and he says it's a dream, and then the camera follows him on his journey. And so I feel that's what kind of created that very intimate, fly-on-the-wall view of him. Because the camera is almost a character. It's the viewer, and it follows Wilde down into hell, really.
With this film, we obviously see the social cost and the homophobia that surrounded Oscar Wilde, and you have always spoken about LGBT representation in Hollywood and being gay in Hollywood, and you use your incredible documentary work to progress social conversations around sexuality. What do you think Hollywood needs to do to improve its representation of LGBTQ people on screen and behind the camera?
I think it just needs to keep moving, and we need to just keep pushing. And I think things are on the move in some ways. I think at the moment, obviously, it's quite easy for a straight guy in the movies to play a gay role, but it's not so easy the other way around. I think what would be nice to look at is what is the mindset that decides that gay person can't play the straight role, because it's a blockage of some sort. Because actually, even if the gay guy is camp as a row of tents, he might be a very good actor and can play the straight part very well, or the straight part. There's tons of straights who are incredibly gayish. So it's a blockage that stops gay people playing straight roles, and it's something that I hope by putting out. In the last few years, for example, there've been so many great movies. Moonlight, from Call Me by Your Name. All these movies, I think, in one sense, if the box office is everything, by the way, to Hollywood. The only thing that counts is box office. So really what people need to do is go to the movies. Because if, say, this movie made $100 million at the box office in the US, there would be 1,000 movies straight away like it. And they'd all be starring gay people, and so there's one very simple way of achieving this is for every single gay, lesbian, transgender, QL plus person to go to my movie, and then it would be such a success that there would be tons of movies more like it. But that's already happening in a way, because that's what happened with Moonlight and Call Me by Your Name. So the more people who go, it's really. People think of Hollywood, I think, as something that has a place that has a moral standpoint. They don't. Their standpoint is cash. So all that's necessary is for people to, and it's easier than politics in a way, because in politics you have to go and vote and everything goes wrong. But in this, all you have to do is go to the movies.
And we didn't need another reason to go see The Happy Prince, but that's a damn good one.
That's a good one.
Thank you very much.
Thank you very much.
Absolute pleasure to talk to you.
Thank you.
Thank you so